And get started here. Given combination of new member and new year and what's on our agenda, I am going to read our Dakota Land, Water, and People acknowledgement today. The Metropolitan Council acknowledges that the land we currently call Minnesota, and specifically the 7-county region, is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota Oyate, who are present and active contributors to our thriving region. As part of the Metropolitan Council's commitment to address the unresolved legacy of genocide, dispossession, and settler colonialism, and the fact that government institutions, including the Metropolitan Council, benefited economically, politically, and institutionally after the forcible removal of the Dakota Oyate, the Metropolitan Council is dedicated to instilling land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. These commitments support the Dakota Oyate, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county region home. So it's not on here, but I do want to just recognize, this is Makiza Johnson from Chaska for District B, so that's the one that was vacated by Bob. So welcome.
Thank you.
So then with that, we can move to approval of the agenda, which we can do by consensus. So I'll just say, is there anything we need to change, modify on the agenda? All right, hearing none, that is approved. And we'll move on to approval of the December 4th commission minutes, which we can take a motion and second from anyone who is present there, which is Chris and myself.
Yeah.
I'll second it then.
Perfect. Good thing we're here.
All right, is there anything that needs to be corrected in those minutes?
There's a motion and second.
Motion by Chris, second by me. All right, hearing none, all in favor of approving those minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries and our minutes are approved. Yes. So that brings us to our public invitation for any interested persons to address the commission. Do we have anyone registered today?
No.
Okay. For Makiza's benefit, if there's anyone in your district that wants to talk to us, there's an email address that they can contact staff before our meeting just to get on a list so we know that they're coming.
Thank you.
I do wanted to just say that Tess is listening in as well as David Yates. So even though they can't vote on anything, we welcome them to the viewing audience from afar.
All right, and then with that, we'll move on to our business item for the day, the Rice Creek North Regional Trail Long Range Plan for Anoka County. And we have Zoe. Go ahead.
Greg, can you pull it up?
Okay,
Cool.
there we go. All right. Good afternoon, Chair, Council Member, and Commissioners. I'm Zoe Mock, Regional Trail Planner with the Met Council, and I'm here today to present the Rice Creek North Regional Trail Long Range Plan on behalf of Anoka County. And I'll mention that Karen Blaska is also here today to take questions afterward if anything arises about the plan. Whoops. Is this the right? Yes, okay. So to orient you all, Rice Creek North is in the northeast part of the Regional Parks and Trails System in southeast Anoka County. It travels through Blaine, Circle Pines, and Lino Lakes, connecting to Ramsey County's portion of Rice Creek North Regional Trail, East Anoka County Regional Trail, and Bunker Hills Chain of Lakes Regional Trail, all while traversing parts of Rice Creek Chain of Lakes Park Reserve. Alright, so this goes fast. Let's see. Okay, we're gonna go to this one. So starting with public and partner engagement. So Anoka County connected with the public and community partners on the newly planned portion of, wait, I'm so sorry. This is in a weird order. Boundaries is what we do next.
No problem.
However you want.
Okay, here we go. So sorry about that. So The boundaries of the regional trail, it's an 8-mile north-south trail. And the alignment starts from the north at Lino Lakes Rookery Activity Center. It then travels south through Rice Creek Chain of Lakes Park Reserve and connects to Bunker Hill Chain of Lakes Regional Trail. Next, there's a newly planned portion of the trail, which will travel along Baldwin Lake before becoming a short on-street segment on Golden Lake Road. Finally, the alignment continues south, connecting with East Anoka County Regional Trail and terminating at Ramsey County's portion of Rice Creek North Regional Trail. So now we will move to public and partner engagement. So Anoka County connected with the public and community partners on the newly planned portion of the trail as well as the existing portion of the trail to talk about additional amenities that can be included. So throughout the public engagement process, the county dealt with a few limitations due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but still was able to host listening sessions, online surveys, and provide updates through their website and social media pages. They also hosted workshops with high school students to learn how to make the trail more accessible and attractive to youth. To engage with partners, Anoka County worked with the cities of Circle Pines, Lino Lakes, as well as the Rice Creek Watershed District. The themes that emerged from the engagement process included the need for additional amenities along the trail, a few safety improvements, and a few concerns about the environmental impact from the trail. Another major point made in the engagement process was the desire for the new trail segment to travel primarily through park property. However, during the site investigation part of the project, there were some archaeological remains that were found in the area, so a different route through Golden Lake Elementary School grounds was planned. And then we'll go to equity analysis. So to lead an equitable engagement process, Anoka County identified priority populations along Rice Creek North Corridor to engage with, including people of color, those younger than 25 and older than 65, and people with disabilities. To accommodate these groups in the engagement process, a mix of online and in-person engagement events were hosted. While much was learned from these engagement opportunities, engagement efforts will continue as the new segment reaches implementation. Development concept. So for the development concept, Rice Creek North Regional Trail is primarily 10 feet wide, though there are some segments that are 8 feet wide in a few constrained areas. The plan calls out that some areas will be widened to 10 feet, and also the missing segment will be completed. This new segment will be primarily off-road, as shown at the image on the left, and a portion will run along a residential street due to those constraints we talked about earlier, and that image is shown on the right, kind of what that will look like. Looking at the total estimated costs, the total estimated development cost for the remaining 1 mile segment of trail is $7.7 million. And while this number might seem high, this segment will include 2 pedestrian bridges as well as some boardwalk, and those are both some higher ticket items. To complete this trail, no parcels are needed for acquisition, and therefore there are no acquisition costs. And finally, the estimated annual operating cost for the trail is $20,000. So the rationale for proposed action is the Rice Creek North Regional Trail Long Range Plan is consistent with the requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, specifically Chapter 5, Strategy 1, and other council policies as included in Thrive 2040. It's important to note that we use the 2040 plan since at the time of engagement for the plan, Imagine 2050 was not yet adopted. So the proposed action before you then is that the Met Council approve Anoka County's Rice Creek North Regional Trail Long Range Plan. With that, we'll stand for questions and remind you that Karen from Anoka County is here. Thank you. Sorry about the jumble.
No problem, made it interesting.
Yeah, choose your own adventure.
Just blame Emily. All right, commissioners, any questions?
I was just curious, maybe more details, if possible, about what kind of stuff did they find on for the archaeological, what was that? Can you tell more about that?
Come on up.
Karen might be the expert in that.
Just
Answer
interesting.
is maybe. Sometimes they don't want people to know too much, so we'll
Oh, I
see.
hear it, yeah, I know they can't maybe say a bunch, but it's just interesting to hear maybe what they ask that question.
Good afternoon, my name is Karen Blaska, I'm the park planning manager for Anoka County Parks. Good question. We believe, since we have not actually had it confirmed, but we believe there was a skeleton found
Oh, wow,
in the 70s. There's some documentation about that.
interesting.
Getting actual records of any of it, we couldn't find any, but because there was the potential for that to be a grave site,
Got it.
we just avoided the whole area.
Oh, so this was based on a previous notation, not a site survey.
1970
Fine.
something, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, the history, you've been working on this for a while, right? So what would be the impact, or what's the present state of the work? Meaning, how long have you been working on it? And what would be the impact if, say, the project didn't move forward?
Well, at this time, we don't have any funding to build the project yet. But we have been doing some design work for that, and that is where we discovered some of the archaeological issues and geotechnical issues. So, yeah, we have requested funds for this, so if we were to get them, we would definitely move on it right away. We're in a good position with the existing plans we have, so it probably wouldn't take long, maybe a year, to get it going again.
For a little bit of process context, the way that we handle our funding, they're required to have a long-range plan like this before they request money or try to build anything. So in order for them to come back at some point saying, we want to get a grant to build a thing, that has to already be in an approved plan. So we get these plans first, and then later we might see something. And sometimes it's at the next meeting, and sometimes it's 30 years later. It all depends on what it is. Sometimes these are, we actually have a thing we're thinking about doing, and sometimes it's, this is what we want to do. No idea when there will be money for it. Did you have another?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
You actually answered it with the historical, like what's the foundation, where this came from. So,
I was wondering, on the maps, when it refers to existing, is that in currently approved plan or just built infrastructure?
Both.
Okay. And then another thing in terms of what's currently on the ground, I know in kind of the northern third of this along the golf course,
Mhm.
there are some loops of unpaved trails back there through the grass.
Single track.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it's really a double track at least. They're like 6 feet wide. Does this involve paving anything that's not currently paved in that stretch? I know further down there's a nothing.
No,
Okay.
it does not. So yeah, the trail will remain as it is existing. And so this is kind of, this master long-range plan is really focused on that missing link.
Okay. That's good. I won't have friends calling me.
Yeah.
Strong city.
Because that's one of the places that people can run dogs.
Yep.
Sled dogs.
Yep.
Everything else. Oh, I saw, this connects to a couple of schools. Are there any like trailhead facility kind of things planned at those points, or is it just a connection?
It would just be a connection.
Anything else that's on staff up?
Yeah, just curiously, the 20,000 for the annual maintenance is for the new part that we're doing or the entire corridor?
For the new piece.
I seem like a little low.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
great.
It's a great idea. I like it.
You can also take motions from anyone at this point?
I make a motion to approve the 7 million license.
The long range.
Yeah, whatever Don is gonna read right now.
Unless you tell me otherwise, I assume the motion is for the proposed action from the staff.
Yes, that's it, you know.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Second from Chris, thank you. So that is simply that the Metropolitan Council approve Anoka County's Rice Creek North Regional Trail Long Range Plan. Is there any other discussion on that? This would be the part where you can say you like it.
I like it, it's great.
All right. Anything else? Hearing none, all in favor of approving that as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That motion carries and that's approved. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Okay, that brings us on to some information items. We'll start hearing about American Indian place names.
Bring the whole party up.
Oh, wow, okay. A series and draft toolkit with apparently everybody, so go ahead and whenever you speak first, introduce yourself and what organization or position you represent, so that Sandy can note them in the minutes. But otherwise, go ahead.
Great, well, good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. Hi, my name is Tracy Kinney. I'm a planning analyst in the Regional Parks and Trails of Community Development here at the Met Council. Today, I am joined by Elsa Wakau, our tribal liaison at the Met Council, and Liam Athas, our Parks and Trails professional intern. And we're also super happy to welcome our place names partners, including Carrie Day Aspinwall, Emma Prosciutta from Minneapolis Park and Rec Board, both of them, and Alice Messer from St. Paul Parks and Rec. So today, we're excited to talk to you about the American Indian Place Name Series and Draft Toolkit Information Data. But first, I really wanted to frame this conversation in an overview of the full slate of the Met Council American Indian and Cultural projects that we will be continuing or starting this year. This includes the Place Names Series and Draft Toolkit, which we'll be talking about in the next slide. The Cultural Resource Inventory Requirement for Long-Range Planning. We're excited to kick this off with a subgroup this year. The Cultural Landscape Subclassification. This new subclassification was introduced into the 2050 policy plan. We will continue engagement and development on this with the 4 Dakota tribes. And the inventory and guidelines of harvestable fruits, mushrooms, and other plants. There is community and agency interest in this topic, so conversations and learning will begin this year. And lastly, the training program and learning opportunities exploring American Indian land practices and other related topics. I'm excited to mention that the Met Council is funding 10 agency staff to go to the MnDOT Tribal State Relations Training in March. These staff will form a learning cohort for the year. And with that, I wanted to just pause and ask Ellison if you have anything else to add.
Sure. So for the cultural landscape designation, we're really excited about that. One of the things that has been a struggle for our Native residents here in the Metro is finding a place for ceremony, especially coming of age ceremonies. So I have a Dakota student. He was a student at Augsburg and he was looking for a 4-day ceremony. He requested Fort Snelling and they were only able to give him 2 days. And so part of this work will be having a designated place where they can go undisturbed and do those traditions. I think one of the things is they have largely been taken away, right, and stolen. And so this will give access to relearn the traditions and start supporting those within our community once again. So really excited about the cultural landscape designation and especially with the harvesting. This has been a huge topic within our community for a long time, and Minneapolis has supported it for many years, and the DNR. And so how can we support our metro parks in doing this in a good way and educating others on how to do it properly, and also showcase, I think one of the biggest concerns for the Native community is when other residents, when you're out harvesting and other residents then think you're stealing or you're doing something that you shouldn't be. So also spreading that knowledge and that awareness out to other residents on what's happening and how it's done and so forth. So they're really excited about those two.
Yeah, there's lots of good work to do this year, and I just want to maybe pass it down to the middle of the table, so then we're gonna move on to the next slide. So today, we're here to provide you an update on the American Indian Park and Trail Place Name Series project. As you know, the Met Council requires individual long-range plans for each regional park and trail. We just saw one right here before us. The regional park and trail place names are developed during the long-range planning process as part of the plan's extensive public engagement efforts. When a regional park or trail name is proposed to be changed, implementing agencies may submit a new long-range plan, a long-range plan amendment, or a system-level request during a policy plan update or Met Council consideration. So Minneapolis Park and Rec Board and St. Paul Parks and Rec have been engaged in ongoing regional park and trail renaming projects with the American Indian community. So this place name series expands Minneapolis and St. Paul's conversations to the regional level through a collaborative engagement series with members of the American Indian community and the 10 regional implementing agencies. This project is led by Walcon TV, Alan Cape, and the agency's tribal liaisons with support provided by Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the Met Council. This is an initial effort focused on centering American Indian voices in park and trail place name processes. The project process and the relationship building is a large part of this process. The project consists of 4 progressive engagements that has taken place from May of 2024 and will continue through 26. This work will culminate in an agency toolkit of cultural learnings. So would anyone like to add anything to that?
Do you want to go first? Well, I don't need that.
And it's actually good for people who are listening online.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm in St. Paul, so I don't know you guys as well. Carrie Day Aspinwall here. I serve as the Park and Recreation Board's Indigenous liaison, lifelong resident of the Phillips neighborhood in Minneapolis, where a good core of our urban Indian community resides. We really appreciate being included in this discussion. We've been naming things within this region for millennia. Most areas that you all are recognizing now already have names. We identify these areas for particular reasons, traveling. There's the big red rock on the right side of the road, and that'll lead you. So again, they're directional. Some have some significance of what has happened in the area. Maybe there was a childbirth that happened there or something of significance. Sometimes an unfortunate death has happened. Trailways. So again, our people were there was a lot of us here, all different tribes. And again, the initial effort to center our voices in this is really important to our Indian elders. Very, very important. They're the history keepers, and I'm sliding on the edge of that right now. Mm-hmm. And I think I look a little bit more than I am. But again, the topic is really important because again, we need to reach deep into those pockets of elders and make sure that their voices are being heard, because why recreate something when you don't have to, when it's already there. Somebody had mentioned something about history, knowing your history. That's really important. And all the elders want to do is be asked. There are history keepers, there are knowledge keepers, our ceremonial keepers. We talk about collaboration. We've been collaborating with one another and across tribes for millennium, so we know how to do this work. And again, coming across the river, collaborating on particular practices and how each tribe or each community does their naming is really important in order for it to balance. Again, we share this territory with many other Indigenous folks and non-Indigenous folks. And so again, we've always been the peacekeepers. And so we want to try and continue to find those trails forward to make sure that people can find us and that they can find where they're going and know a little bit of history about those places once they get there. So yeah, we've really appreciated being included, so. Em, you wanna say anything?
Just say one sentence. So I've been lucky enough to work with Carrie Day for the last couple of years on our Indigenous Action Plan work at the Park Board. And so naming, as she mentioned, there's a lot of wisdom that agencies are still looking to learn to make sure that our future naming processes are done the way they should be done. And this is one of many things that we are trying to incorporate into our policies and systems at the Park Board related to Dakota Indigenous, elevating those voices in our work.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Alice Messer with St. Paul Parks and Recreation. And just to add on, St. Paul has recently renamed Indian Mounds Regional Park to Walk on Teepee, and then we're working on a cultural landscape designation for Amnesia Ska. So it's been really impactful to work across agencies. I think we're all doing incredible work across the region. People tend to get tired of engaging with different organizations, and I think as we look at cultural landscapes, these boundaries don't exist, and so this ability to work with the Met Council and work collaboratively has been really impactful, and it continues to build those relationships and conversations that we're having, and we all have this deep commitment for follow-through, and so that's just an important piece that we've heard is, as Carrie Day was saying, the elders, you know, they want to be asked, they're giving so much, and we have a responsibility to follow through.
I just want to highlight the photo really quickly. So this is a friend of mine. It just happened to Tracy to pick it, but this is her youngest little one. And she is an avid runner and an avid reader. So she lives closer to Plymouth, and so she's always running out there. And I just think this photo is so fitting to what we're talking. It just happened to be chosen. So she's a Ojibwe woman that lives up near Plymouth. So yeah, good friend of mine.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I love it. Great words. So we'll just move on. So this series includes 4 engagements exploring American Indian history, values, and processes related to park and trail and place names. The engagements are from 4 different perspectives, including knowledge keepers, elders, youth, and implementing agencies. So the first engagement on May 20th focused on knowledge keepers' perspectives. The meeting included a panel discussion that was facilitated and documented by Lemoyne LaPointe and his son, both American Indian community members and renowned for facilitation. Around 50 American Indian community members and 7 regional park implementing agencies attended the meeting. Some of the themes that we heard at the meeting include Dakota connection to the land and place names reflect relational worldviews rather than ownership. Historical erasure and reclamation is real. The current landscape carries the weight of systemic erasure of Dakota people through settler renaming and redevelopment. Cultural revitalization in language is seen as a vehicle to honor ancestors and restore the worldview. Consensus and community process. Historically, Dakota people practice consensus and pluralism, accepting multiple truths and perspectives. And these are just a little snippet of his actual words. A few more themes are tangible benefits and broader impact. Renaming efforts are opportunities for public education, cultural resurgence, and more. Structural barriers and institutional critique related to extractive engagement without visible action or follow-through from government institutions. And allyship and accountability. Allies were called upon to listen, follow Indigenous leadership, and use their positions within institutions to support. So I'll just pause. Does anyone else want to talk about the first meeting?
I think all of these main themes are so very, very important to understanding and sharing knowledge with one another. And You know, any discussion that we can sit down and have is going to have significant tangible benefits. You know, you lean over and you talk to your friend, and then she's gonna go over and talk to somebody else who talks to somebody else, and that is very much how it is in our Indian community. Knowledge is power. People who know what's going on, we look towards that leadership, and we hope that they continue to share what they know, because we all are successful, we all move forward, and we all gain a greater understanding when that education and knowledge is shared. It definitely breaks down those structural barriers and helps our institutional partners understand, and how the policies and procedures, much like what you all discuss, impact our people, and how and what the barriers are, and how we might be able to help you understand how to remove those barriers, and how we could have better relationships. And again, that allyship and accountability to one another, that's trust. That's big. And we've been here a very long time. And so again, building trust with our communities, with our relations, with our allies is significant. And we continue to move that forward and do so in good faith, and look forward to seeing some of those structural barriers and institutional critiques emerge from these partnerships and discussions that we have. Not just to have the discussions, but to actually see. We had talked about elders waiting for something to happen, or what is it? You know, again, our people have been extracted, and never really expected anything, only that we are here to share and to teach and to share that knowledge. Hasn't always gone as we thought it would, but again, you know, the road is long, and so is our memory. So we'll be here, we will continue to be here, and we will continue to be your allies in this journey.
I can add that I was really impressed in all my years of community engagement. I've been here in the Metro for a decade doing this work, and we had full rooms in both the panel discussion and also the elders. Large part is because of Carrie and her work, but this is an important topic, and the community really appreciates us banding together and not quadrupling the work on top of the community. And they're showing up and they're acknowledging that. And so I think that is something that was really impressive to me. And also, I'll say on the flip side, a lot of the, if you know of them, maybe Illuminative has done a lot of work of our allies and of non-natives, and they want to learn this education too. There is a large part, they did focus groups across the United States, and I think it was like 89% want to learn about natives. They want to have accurate information. And so there is the other side of the residents here at the Metro that would appreciate this, and having accessible, accurate information.
Nope, good.
So I'm gonna move on to the second place names meeting. This meeting took place on November 17th. This meeting highlighted elders' perspectives related to place names. This meeting included small table discussions on historical consideration and community conversations related to place names. Alamoy LaPointe and his son also facilitated and documented this meeting as well. They are also in the process of working on the notes as we speak. So the meeting included around 20 American Indian elders and community members and around 5 implementing agencies. My table included 2 elder women who were strong advocates for community conversations and action. What were your thoughts about this second meeting?
Sure. You're always gonna hear from me. That's my job, that's my job. No, ever since I was young, just a quick little story. my dad brought me down to the American Indian Center because I had graduated from high school a year and a half before my class walked. So I was done. And he's like, you're not laying around, you're gonna go to work. So he marched me down to the Indian Center and I met with their executive director down there, Frances Fairbanks. And she embraced the need for me to give voice. That my dad was really clear, make sure that she can tell people about what we're doing down here, because at that time, the American Indian Center was brand spanking new. I mean, that thing hadn't even had a year, hadn't even had their glass windows washed yet. And so I had a great opportunity to learn from about 6 Native elder ladies. They were hard, they were tough. You'll usually see me with a pen and paper in my hand, that's habit. You're gonna write down everything you hear and you're gonna bring it all back down here to tell us exactly what they said, and that's what I've done all my life. And it's the same thing with the elders. Those elders that were leaders at that time now come to me and say, you're gonna go over here to this meeting because this is something we need to be paying attention to, and you're gonna bring it back and tell us what's going on. You're gonna participate. And so now, I feel so honored that they can join me in these discussions. No longer do they have to sit in the back. They don't have to sit in the back row and just listen and hope that their messenger sends the word. They can join me now. And so having these types of discussions where we're sitting at tables with 16 elders, 5 elders over here, Dakota, Ojibwe, all the nations that are here, just want a moment to sit down and get to know one another, to learn what the experiences that they had and what we can do together to like I said, to keep journeying down this path, because it is a long road and we're still traveling. And so again, you can always count on the Minneapolis elders for sure to stand up and represent their community, their tribes. We had a good representation from the Little Earth community, and as you know, that is the largest urban Indian housing project in the United States. They have over 800 units in over 853 households there, most of them female-led. We have over 500 children that are under the age of 18. And the Park and Recreation Board, we're doing some master planning right now, and we're gonna be redoing the parks that surround that community. So again, they're there, they're with us, and we found our voice again. So we thank you for that.
So I just want to touch on next steps as we close out the Place Names Series presentation for tonight. We're going to be continuing with the last 2 Place Names engagements. We also have a check-in with the Met Council's American Indian Advisory Council, a commission council next Monday. We will also be having deeper conversations with implementing agency staff on the draft toolkit that we'll be talking about and the cohort that we have just established. And so what I wanted to say is, as we wrap up the Place Names overview, I'd like to mention our deep gratitude to our partners. This work is a labor of love for our team. We thank the team for their time, the meetings on the cold nights, and asking them to share this work verbally tonight. And the team asks you, if you learn anything tonight, to share that with someone to pass along the information. Yeah, it's been wonderful. So we'll move on to the draft toolkit because we're excited to show you that as well. So as part of the Place Name Series project, a toolkit is being developed by the Met Council. This toolkit will serve as a resource to implementing agencies to support an understanding of cultural learnings, as well as house an exploratory inventory of the regional park and trail place name history. The draft toolkit is an initial landing space for the Place Names Series learnings and historical backgrounds on regional park and trail names. The intent of the holding tank is to share out learning to the regional park and trail implementing agencies so as to not exhaust the community with the same questions. The toolkit is very draft and will be developed more fully in subgroup right now it's kind of like in a database format. And so we hope to move it into a web module that has more branding and more simplified language. Now Liam, who has a degree practically in history, is going to talk a little bit more about our regional park and trail inventory that rests really heavily on history analysis. So Liam.
Thank you, Tracy. Degree pending, actually. But yes, as Tracy said, Toolkit is very much in a draft database format, and some of the data we're looking at is, oh, I did something wrong there. Is there a laser pointer?
No joke.
Ah, shoot. Okay, I'll just point to it then. So from the toolkit, we have park names and trail name categories, and if you can read it well, the overwhelming amount of park names come from historical figures. About 37% of all park names come from historical figures, either 400 years ago to today. And then the second biggest category, 25%, is natural features, followed by historic locations, then plants, animals, and cultural communities. For trails, it's roughly the same, where we have 25% of names coming from natural features, rivers, mountains, and then we have about 20% from historical figures, descendant plants, miscellaneous cultural communities. The data it tells a story, but one thing we also want to do is actually tell the story of those park and trail names. And so we brought a couple of stories here today to kind of show you what we're working with. The first story comes from the Nokomis-Hiawatha Regional Park. And so this story is very fascinating because it involves indigenous names, but not from an indigenous source. So Lake Nokomis and Hiawatha are named after the Song of Hiawatha, which is a poem written in the 1850s from Henry Longfellow. He was like a European settler who moved into the Americas in the 1800s. Originally he lived out in the East Coast, and then he moved to Minnesota and wrote this poem. And Longfellow's poem, it uses indigenous names because he lived with tribe of Ojibwe for a year. And the story has this character called Hiawatha. And because of the Song of Hiawatha's success in the 1860s, these two lakes were named after they were platted after characters from his poem. But interestingly enough, Hiawatha isn't actually a Dakota or Ojibwe word. It actually stems from a name of an Iroquois leader out in the Ohio Valley who founded the Iroquois Confederation hundreds of years earlier. And Nokomis is an Ojibwe word for grandmother, but it's also a character in Longfellow's story. So we have a story here that these are indigenous names, but they're not from an indigenous source. They're from a European poem that was based off indigenous material. And so it kind of highlights that we have indigenous parts of our history in our place names, but it's not exactly black and white. There's a lot of gray and metal in these place names. And so another kind of cool story I want to share is the story of Lake George. This is a great example of historic figures that have their names embedded in our trail and history names. And so Lake George was the site of several battles between Dakota and Ojibwe tribes way before European settlers arrived. There's some archaeological evidence of recorded burial mounds in and around the area. But in the 1840s, when American surveyors first settled and charted the area, they didn't have a name for it because they kind of ignored the indigenous names. And so to pick something to name it on the map, they picked the name of the chief land surveyor, George Arbuckle. There's not a lot of historic record on this person, but the name stuck because the maps were used to kind of chart and plat local towns. And so the name stuck. And this is a very common practice that we see across a lot of different trail and place names. Another story we have is of Point Douglas Regional Trail. I've always wanted to use one of these. Bring it closer in. So Point Douglas was actually a small town that was chartered around the 1850s. It was founded by a bunch of settlers from Illinois around the Chicagoland area. And the town is actually named after a famous statesman from Illinois named Stephen A. Douglas. He was a very popular figure at the time. He was a prominent Democrat known as the Little Giant. And you might know him because he was a candidate for the 1860 presidential election. He faced Abraham Lincoln in these famous debates for the state Senate position. But he's also a very controversial figure in American history because as a Democrat in the 1860s, he was very pro-states' rights, which found him in a position of often defense for slavery. While he didn't own slaves outright, he was in that gray category. And so it's a name that it doesn't have a lot of meat to it, but it kind of provokes us to think and ponder about what we name our trails and parks after. And then finally, Highway 5 Regional Trail. I'll let you guess what this one is named after. No, but it's with our regional trails, around 10% of all trails in the region are named after highways and railroads. And Highway 5 is a great example because it follows Highway 5 for much of the route between, I think it's about 6 or 7 miles. But it was completed in 1950 and runs for 80 miles. I just read that. But funny enough, the part of the highway that the trail actually runs around was renamed after Prince in 2023. And it's a nice little story that shows that names do change and that we can have some fascinating history behind our regional trail and park names.
Well, thanks so much, Liam. That was awesome. That was just a little purview into all of his research that he did this summer, this last year. And so it's just an absolute wealth of information and it's a great parlay into this slide because what we heard from the agencies about the draft toolkit as it is today is that it's really thought-provoking and it's an initial kind of glimpse into the history, and it also suggests like a deeper dive, and that deeper dive could potentially happen during the long-range planning process. So that was some of the agencies' recommendation there. We did hear from the agencies that they do support the toolkit and I really appreciate the a combined dissemination of all these learnings that we've been gathering. And that another piece that Liam had mentioned is that the place names aren't always in the power of the agencies, like maybe Lake George, the lake may be named Lake George, which is actually the responsibility of the DNR. So there's recognition of that. What else? The inquiry in we've also heard very strongly from the agencies to add the original American Indian names for each regional unit, if possible and practical. And that is going to be a long endeavor, but there are names already available. So we're excited to look into that more fully. It is a process, and is why we're putting it out there for advice. So it's really exciting to get that type of advice. And then we also had another question about how to use the toolkit with with agency tribal liaisons and their boards. So it's a really good learning tool, and we'll think about how to create more resources within the tool that have cut sheets for boards for their learning. So that wraps up the toolkit. As I mentioned before, the toolkit's really in a draft status. It's in a database format, and we look forward to developing it with a subcommittee and making it more user-friendly with a website. The next steps, as I mentioned before, we're excited to embark on the last 2 place name engagements. We're going to be establishing and engaging a place names work group to continue developing the toolkit. And we're excited to initiate work with the implementing agencies on the full slate of American Indian Advisory Council Section 9 commitments. So that's what we have for you today. What we're hoping to hear from you is what are your thoughts on the series, the place name series and the draft toolkit, and do you have any ideas on how to make the toolkit better?
Okay. Feedback, commissioners.
I think it's a wonderful, the whole thing is wonderful. So I really appreciate the work that everybody's doing. And this is, it seems like a long time coming for this, and it seems kind of slow at times too to kind of get going where we need to go. But I really do appreciate all the work, and I do have, I'm not really familiar with there was some lakes renamed in Minneapolis a while back, and is this related to that project in any way, or how, was this born of that, or how are those two related, if any relation?
I don't know if I need a microphone. I would say, yes, we have renamed, we did rename Bedamakoska a few years back, and most recently, Carrie Day and I have been involved with unnaming a park. So we actually removed the name Sibley from Sibley Park, and it is now temporarily named 40th Street Park.
Okay.
And we are currently going through trying to identify what that process looks like to actually rename the park. So for us, I think that was a very tangible park naming process that we're currently involved with, that connected to kind of this discussion.
Yeah.
But yes, the park board has been involved in other place names processes as well.
And what are some of the barriers that you face with this whole project? Like unseen barriers or some of the larger barriers that you face?
I don't think we really, I haven't ran into any barriers except understanding what the process is at the park board to get it undone and get it renamed.
That's a big barrier.
Many of us don't know that. That's why they push people like me.
Government processes are weird and confusing.
Well, I think that is a large part of Native work too, is that it's never been done before. We don't do it this way, right? And so you then have to, part of a lot of Carrie and I's work is even developing the policy or the process in order to get it done.
Yeah.
And so I know, and I'm doing that not only in parks, but also housing and also environmental services through the Met Council. And so this is taking place throughout Indian country really, is they're like, okay, we're more than happy to help you with that, request, but we don't have a policy in place for that. And so I think that's kind of what they went through as well with Bedamakoska. And then even when I worked in the libraries, we wanted to rename Franklin, and they're like, well, we don't have a process to rename a library, right? So it's all about, these processes and wanting to make sure to do it right, but we have nothing to segue that, right? So, but I think that this work, a barrier is really, and this is, I think, where we would lean on you all, is getting the word out about this work, and showcasing the knowledge that we're even doing this work, right? And so how to get the parks to then disseminate and I think this is really important to people that even don't come to the parks, right? So how are we reaching those folks that, because I think a lot of natives do not participate in parks. And why is that? And it's so like, how can we, this is like, we're going, I'm going all, dreaming big here, but really, I think one of the things is just promotion of this work and having more people involved. We don't want, just Native community, everybody is invited to these events and so forth, and so that's where we would lean on you. And I don't know if it would be so much of a barrier, but definitely more work needs to be done there.
I have one more thing. I don't know if this is a barrier, but something that I heard loudly from the elders conversation in November was that, when we normally do like a white person naming process, it's very like localized with the neighbors. And when we are going through a Dakota-led naming process, it goes much bigger than even the city of Minneapolis. Some of the elders there were telling us to look out folks from North Dakota and South Dakota because those are the people that should be involved in that process. And that is something that feels very challenging as a city agency to think about. How do we build out resources and relationships in a way that like honors the process they're telling us we need to go through, when that just really challenges us further than we normally, that just goes so much bigger than we would normally go as an agency.
And I think that's the reason why I strongly recommend working with the elders. We had such a thing called the Relocation Act where everybody had to move away from the reservations that they put us on and move us back into the city so we could be productive citizens here. And with that, we brought the names. we knew the names. The names were already embedded in our history and through our families and through our clans. And but to be able to build that confidence in yourself and where you're at and how you represent is the steps that we needed to take in order to let all you good folks know what was really going on, what had really happened, and what was the history that was here. I'm so thankful that we have historians in the room, as young as you are, young man. But until you get a little bit of this, then we'll talk. I'm kidding. No, the relationship between our elders and our young people are so very critical for this very reason, for the reason of sharing the history to the next one. We practice ceremonies that have been in existence since the beginning of time, and that includes naming. Naming of our children is so very important to how they grow up. We take those characteristics that we see when they're first born. When you look at their feet, when you look at their hands, when you can hear the coos in your ear, they're telling you something. And so again, we don't name them right away because they have to have time to be with us. And that's the same thing with these. There's trails that have been walked and walked and walked all over here, and then finally all of a sudden somebody's like, well, here's this. You'll recognize it by this. There's red willows all the way down this pathway. And so again, they're real descriptive and have significant meaning, most of them. Yeah. Some of them are just plain funny. You know, laughing waters. Have you heard anything about laughing waters?
Well, and I think too, I'll add into what Carrie is saying is that Franklin Ave, Lake Street, those were all native paths already. So, and I think us like taking ownership here in the Twin Cities of what is our history and honoring that. And I just think I do have to say I've lived all over and worked throughout Indian country, and I do have to say I'm really proud to be here in Minnesota. We all are doing really, really wonderful work, and working alongside our tribes, our state government is doing wonderful work, and we are one of the, I would say I haven't seen this type of work anywhere else in the country, right? So we're really leading this, and I'm proud of that, and so thankful for the work of everybody here, and really excited to see where this lands, and once the website comes live, I'm sure other parks will be working on it. I have someone that was the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer in Denver, and he reached out and he was asking what we're doing. And so it is exciting. We're making some waves here, and just knowing that I meant to share the city names. If you ever want to look it up in Google, there are a lot of city names here that are Dakota names like Chaska, and so we have already done this throughout our history already, and it's just kind of learning that education, because it's already here, we just have to kind of listen to it. So really excited about where this goes.
I wanted to emulate a little bit on the tribes. The park board went out and met with representatives from the tribes and asked them how they felt about naming, and it's like she said, it's about time. We really need to recognize the original history there, and the tribes will be watching us. Are they gonna do what they say, or is this just more of this? And again, we still use our original names. When I go home to Leech Lake, I know where all them lakes are and where my dad used to fish, and those Ojibwe names that are attached to that. The road that my parents lived on was an Ojibwe name, and I know those names. My children, my grandchildren know those names. And so again, it's that familiarity. It's knowing that there are willows up and down this path you'll see, and you'll know this when you come to this. And so it really is a journey for us, and we're just so happy to be able to share, because again, we have found many who have been lost and needed a little naming to to continue on at their journey. And so we've made many friends and relatives along the way, and we continue to do that. So yeah, I'm really glad to be part of this group and the discussions that we're having around this, and it's good.
Wendy. Thanks. This sounds like just a fantastic learning opportunity for everybody. And if the toolkit can end up having a map where you can zoom in and pick out, you know, and get more details, like the history of whatever the white name is and the native names and where all of that came from, so that it's all in one place. It's a great thing for schools to do history work, but it also is an efficient way for local governments to look and say, okay, do we want to be named after a surveyor, or do we want to use the indigenous name without having to come back every single time and ask you guys and wear you out, you know, be able to collect all of that in one place, I think is a great opportunity. I think a map, it would be really, really helpful.
Thank you.
If it's not too hard to do.
There are GIS tools that can help actually bridge that gap, so all the knowledge you have,
We have GIS people.
you know, all the knowledge you have, it's more of it now, it's just spinning, excuse me. You gotta love Minnesota weather. You know, all that information that you have in the elders can be put down into some type of relational database to extract and have that shared. And you know, you can elaborate a little bit more. You know, you asked for suggestions. You know, one of the things, history. I love the fact that you had the history and you even triggered a thought from mine. You lived all over the country, said you love all over the country. I'm former military, so I've seen a lot. And knowing, you know, facts outweighs pretty much anything. But also sharing facts and educating, you know, I love your perspective. How does a city handle something of this magnitude, right? It's not really the place for the city. It's really just to facilitate. It's the knowledge that's going to be passed down. And I'm not critiquing, I'm just saying. It's going to be passed down. And, you know, coming from a native background myself, right? You know, of course, I'd love to hear this. But also I'm very concerned about the impact. You know, Stephen Covey says, what is the end state? Have the end state in mind, right? So her suggestion about having that dual history, right? Having, hey, by the way, this descriptive information is this. It may have Prince George's name, or was it George? You know, George's name on it. But the fact of the matter is that that relationship is there, right? And so now you're knocking out two birds with one stone. You have the history now and the history of where it came from. And now we're moving forward as a group, so, yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because coming from Mexico, I have my Hispanic, you know, roots, and we know everything, we understand it, we learn it at school. So I know the names and how to pronounce them, how to use them. But I also know the colonial side, because it's part of my roots also. You can change one or the other, so you don't want to lose one of the other one. In the details, it's nice to have both. It's nice to understand them. Now, knowing how hard it is to pronounce, you know, native names sometimes, it will be very hard for people to just start say it correctly. And but I wanted to share a little bit of history of my country. In 1968, when the Olympic Games came to Mexico City, most of the regions in Mexico are named after Nahuatl names or Aztecas names. So you have places like Tlatelolco, Nezahualcóyotl, Iztapalapa, things that not every person from other countries could do. So what they do is kind of what you were saying, make it iconographic. So you have the redwood trails, so you will have a picture of the redwood trails, the name that we know, and the translation. So if we can do something like that, that would be wonderful. And it is in
the ideas that are coming out to share that and to begin to expand and to build our capacity in those areas is so exciting. We're the park board has been partnering with Owamni Ogedeapi. See, that's Dakota, and I have an Ojibwe tongue, so my tongue rolls a little bit differently. But we're learning from their people and partnering with that agency down there along the riverfront. And we talk about trailways. I mean, many of the Ojibwe and Anishinaabe people were coming south down the Mississippi River, ended up by St. Anthony Falls, and that's where they got off and started making their way through the system of trailways that were there. Many of them were women and children traveling down to Fort Snelling to go and watch their husbands be hung. The 38 Dakota plus 2 that were hung down there, many of those women came via canoe, by foot, carrying their children, having their elders in their arms. It was tough. It was really tough, but those names still there. They're still there. And I'm so happy that the park board recognizes that significant history, because we go down there and expect that we can get to the water. You know, we got the Corps of Engineers right there, gates. You know, I used to ask my dad, how come we can't get down there? Because we were trying to get there to go and pass our tobacco and our offerings, and we couldn't go down there. And he says, they don't want us to go down there. It's still there. There's a little bit more access, and thanks to OO for helping open up those areas, and that the partnership with the park board has been so significant. Building wooden canoes down there, so bringing back some of that historical stuff that was happening along the river, renaming places that reflect more of the original indigenous names that were presented down there. And so it's an exciting time for us. We're excited but cautious. I think we've held our breath for a very long time, but we are in a new day, and we have good partners like you all and the park board, St. Paul, who are coming together. Like minds think alike, and so we're just really looking forward. And again, our tribal communities are hopeful but cautious. Twin Cities is a melting pot of many tribes, and there's a lot of voices to be heard there. So we have the pleasure of trying to provide that balance. I listen to Dakota people and Ojibwe people and Seneca people and Hopi people, all here in the Twin Cities. And they all want one thing, for us to be able to be together, to be able to have folks recognize our history and respect it.
And I hear what you're saying, and I would also say that the Native community is learning how to say those words as well.
Oh gosh, yes.
You know, one of my best friends went to boarding schools, my mother went to boarding school, and the language was taken from them. And so we would be learning right alongside everybody else. And so I think as a government institution, acknowledging what was stolen and what was taken on purpose, and now finding a way to support the learning that something was intentionally stolen, right? So, and we don't, as Natives, we don't expect people to say things correctly. And there's different versions of things, like B'day Makaska, I've heard people say M'day Makaska. You know, there's different variations, and I think the one thing that our elders and everyone would ask is that we try. And so not saying, oh, you're not saying that right. I think that's a very non-native way to think of something that's, you know, and so we would just ask that, you know, you just keep trying, and we wouldn't expect perfection and
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I also don't, it's a part of respect is know how to say something correctly. I have never heard how people say my name, because they say it all wrong.
Yeah, mine too, yeah.
But some people get offended by it, and you know, when I'm reading the names of the, you know, the Dakota ones or the Ojibwe ones, and there are some similarities with the Nahuatl accent, so I can read them better sometimes. But at the same time, like you say, I don't know if it's correct or not, so I don't know how to teach it. And I will really love that the younger generation here learn from the beginning, because that's the way to expose. Like, you expose them to language, they will get in 2 seconds. So
there's so many fun ways to learn language. It's just hilarious. my husband and I, we pop a CD into the truck and we're riding around Leech Lake Reservation, talking to all these people who are wild ricing, and in between, we're trying to say the words that we want to say to them before we get to the landing, you know, and we laugh so hard, and it's fun. It really is fun to learn another language, and things are so descriptive, and we're trying to teach our children and grandchildren, and you get us all together, it's a hoot. It's really a hoot.
And to your point about pronunciations, one of the struggles we have in this area, because it was largely Dakota, is in Ojibwe, things have largely standardized on the double vowel
Yep.
way of
Right.
writing things in the Latin alphabet. And Dakota is often written in a different orthography where we don't know those characters.
Right.
So we may need to publish some sort of like guides of this letter is this, because people see it like, I don't know, it's close to an N, but that doesn't mean it has anything to do with that. We don't know the alphabet to start with.
I keep my Ojibwe dictionary at my right hand,
Yeah.
because I don't speak the language fluently. But boy, if my aunt started scolding me or my grandmother was scolding me, I knew exactly what they were saying. Exactly. No doubt.
Wendy.
My mother-in-law was Thai, and I learned some really interesting Thai words that I can't say in public. I think having, as part of that database, having, like, when you have the dictionaries online where you can poke the little
Right.
speaker and it says the word for you, is really helpful.
The phonetic, yeah.
And like, I know that B'day Makaska is B'day Makaska, I have no idea what that means. So having the translation
Yeah.
with it is also very helpful. And distinguishing between the pretendian words like Hiawatha and the actual native words is helpful.
Well, and also the ones that are kind of a native word but thoroughly butchered. Like I live in Matamidi. Not right.
Yeah, we definitely could do that. The U has wonderful language teachers, and they've actually done a large part of that on their online dictionary. And so, yeah, definitely. And I'll say too, Marlena Miles, Dakota artist, she has a wonderful place names, Twin Cities map. And those names are done, and she also does the phonetics too along with it. So there is work being done that we could partner with.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
I had a couple of questions.
Oh.
One is just kind of like figuring out what the scope of your effort is and what you're trying to talk about names for. Cause like I'm thinking when we're in the context of park units, those are things that we've created with a legal definition, borders on a map. They're, you know, very much white people constructs, so there isn't necessarily a native name for that park because it's not a thing that they would have, you know, thought of, but it overlaps and there might be one prominent feature that makes sense to use a name for, but maybe it overlaps with a few or there's something nearby. So to what extent are we talking about names of like the parks and trails as units in our system plan versus trying to name spots or features within them, and how far does that go? Like, are we talking about names for 100 things or 10,000 things?
Well, I think that's really up to the parks, right? So, or, you know.
Yeah, it's, so Chair Commissioners, it's an excellent question. Related to the policy plan and how the Met Council documents and works with their funding and the boundaries and the things like that. We function on one name for the unit, and all the sub-names are not codified in the policy plan. So we really focus on one name for the unit, and that's what we're focusing on.
So potentially a multi-part answer of the council cares about this part, the agencies might do other stuff.
We just really, I think the starting point for agencies, we wanted to be the convener this information initially and then really supporting them as their own path, right? And so I think, and that's kind of the way I see it. And our youth component that's gonna be coming up, we are asking them these things, like, okay, if you were to have a park, what would you name it? And maybe that's something that a community does together, like what would you want to rename this? And it doesn't, you know, and come together, okay, we don't need George anymore, you know, he sounds like a great guy maybe, you know, in some form or fashion. But maybe this is something that they take on themselves, but just to get those, I think, things flowing and turning in each agency's, I think, I really love how each agency is being individualistic in their community, right, and in their neighborhood and in their residents there, and I think that's the beauty of the Twin Cities is how different we all are and we embrace that. So but I think we really just wanted a starting point for, because this was such a hot topic for all the agencies, and how can we support them?
That also answers another thing I had about rules.
If I understand right, we just provide the information, agencies decide, do they wanna do signage at the parks? Do they wanna rename or have two names or what, but we're just providing the information.
And then I would be happy to help in the future with anything they may need, but.
Now, since you mentioned, you know, we work with one name for things, and you brought up that at one of your meetings, you discussed the problem of there's a lot of places that are known to many different peoples of potentially several different languages with different names. Did you come up with any answers to that question about how to respect those multiple names when we land on one for most things?
I don't know that, I think we need to, I think for documentation, there's, we do have to have some clarification, right, we have to have one name, right? But like with me, I'm Allison Waka, and then you put Menominee and Navajo in parentheses after, right? So what we've been seeing is, like a name, oh gosh, what's Lake Harriet? It'll be Lake Harriet Badegumai, yeah. So it's in parentheses after, so it's just acknowledging that there is an alternative name, but let's say the records say such a, Lake Harriet, right? So there are ways that you can go about it.
Are there any problems that you're seeing so far in terms of like friction about, do people get upset if they're like the second name instead of the first name, or is that kind of going okay so far?
Yeah, no.
I can
Yeah.
a quick jump in, and it's a little different than what you were noting, Allison, but at the park board, we recently just updated our naming policy, and we, both of you correct me if I'm saying anything that doesn't feel accurate, but my understanding is there is a bit of a, like the Dakota community, at least the way we framed our naming policy, kind of gets first dibs to help us understand if an area is a site of significant for them because they're the original peoples here. And then we also actually updated our naming policy to have an indigenous-led naming process as well. So provided that the Dakota community doesn't have a site of significance at a specific spot, we've opened the door to then potentially have other indigenous communities be able to name something for them. And so Cedar Avenue Field Park is kind of the park that's maybe on the docket. That's right next to Little Earth. Little Earth has a lot of Ojibwe leadership there, so it's possible there might be an Ojibwe name of the park. So we've tried to think a little bit about hierarchy, and let me know if I've missed said
No,
somewhere.
that's correct. I think I was thinking of like Dakota has two different names sometimes for the same location too, so but I think this is, again, never been done before. And so I will say that there is no, we can always change things, right? Like the land acknowledgement, like this is the land acknowledgement right now, And we have given ourselves like to revise it every 2 years, right? And things may change, the metro is going to change and adjust, and so just giving ourselves grace and permission to constantly revise and update and learn as we go.
And I'll just add quickly, in St. Paul, when we went through the renaming for Weechi Happy, at the last council meeting, we heard from people that this isn't how we would say Weechi Happy, we would spell it differently. And so we just acknowledge that, like, this has been our process, working with the TIPOs and the tribal presidents, the name is this, but we also acknowledge there's other dialects or ways to say it and just have that.
Yeah, especially when they're like, dialectical things are
Yep.
relatively easy compared to just a completely different language. Like I know in Ojibwe, there's voiced consonants on one end and unvoiced consonants on the other, and they are mutually intelligible and most of them don't care, but it looks different because you write it with a different letter.
For me, it was which aunt was sitting on what side.
Yeah.
Like I was working with some professors in southeastern Ontario, so they're down in that area. But then I know a bunch of names from northern Minnesota that are the opposite. Okay, that's different. One other question I had, and this even doesn't necessarily need to be answered so much as maybe thought about, especially for this area and the way history went for that, there were several groups that were pushed out generally by settlement, and then some that were forcibly removed, some where children were kidnapped and brought to residential schools spanning several different states, and some people have come back to this area and some have not. So I'm just wondering, is there something we have to be careful of in this process of, as we talk to these people in different areas, I imagine some of these conversations might even be painful when they think about those places, whether it's that's a place that has a name because something horrible happened there, or that's a place that's super important to us that has now been destroyed or taken from us. What do we need to know about how to carefully approach those conversations with people?
I think having a native that is helping facilitate the conversation is, like, us choosing Lemoyne was intentional, right? And we do smudge before and after if anybody wanted to, and just giving place and acknowledging that there is trauma associated, but what we are doing is a small piece of rectifying that. So I think it's kind of just the acknowledgement that this is us trying to grow from that and learn from that.
Okay.
I'll also just share that participating in the first two conversations, they were very heavy conversations. Like I recognized like my privilege very much in that room. The emotions are very raw, and I think as an ally entering that space, you have to be like aware of that too, because it is very different. There is a lot of history associated with naming conversations. Absolutely.
Balance. Gotta have a lot of balance. Because again, it isn't like it used to be. Historically, we were here, they were there, kind of thing, and now we're just kind of all together, and so we have to be really respectful and honor one another's history and the truth that each individual tells. Because that's a truth that's been born through them from their grandmothers and great-grandmothers, and that's a truth that they will carry to their children and to their grandchildren. It's all reciprocal, it comes and goes and it keeps turning like that. And again, walking in balance it seems so cliche, but it is. It's what we need to do. We've had to do that since you're coming. We didn't know how that was all going to be. We did our best, and we continue to do our best, and to help and to teach and to share, and that's where we find our balance every day.
Anyone else? Yes.
You know, during this conversation, I didn't realize how important this conversation is. Last year, we just opened in the Waconia area, Paradise Commons. And as I was listening to you, it sparked an old thought. We did a survey in the Carver County area to rename a building. It was a former site for the head events like weddings. It had been there apparently a very, very long time, and we couldn't renovate it, so we had to actually tear it down. Built a state-of-the-art building, and then it came to this naming ceremony, or not naming ceremony, but what would we name this building? Of course, native names came up. When we did the survey, we couldn't get enough information back, so it was left to the commissioners. I sat as the chair of Carver County Parks and Rec Commission, and I was baffled, and I couldn't understand why I was baffled until today. We didn't have any representation. We didn't have a construct to go and pull some information from to actually say, okay, we'd like to do this and not like to do this. We had good intentions, but to your point, it's so brand new. We didn't have anything to write on, just an empty piece of paper, right? And so this is very important because I was even looking up my own notes and I was like, wait a minute, why is this so familiar to me? Even Coney Island is considered a designated historical spot for a specific reason with a name plaque. And I had the honor of voting all that stuff in, pushing it through and so on. And so I can, how would you say, I would say continue to work, bring people along. I can say, living in Carver County, it was completely nothing to actually pull from. So we didn't have anything. So this would be very important in educating and all the other suggestions that you have here too.
So I think to your point too is having resources, that go along with this website of maybe who to contact or good history, which library or so forth. You could get in contact if you're looking for those information. Awesome.
Anything else? Do you have anything else for us?
That is all, thank you so much.
Yes,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
This might be the largest presentation you've ever had.
So we made an impact?
It was excellent.
We bring them out,
I'm also interested in hearing more about like the ceremonial spaces and the foraging stuff.
Oh,
We don't have time.
TBD.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, that brings us on to our other one. I know we spent a bunch of time on that, but I think that was necessary for us.
That was great.
So now we're going to talk about bridging facilities, work group results, and some proposed language changes for our policy. With a much smaller group. Go ahead, Jessica.
You didn't bring a entourage?
I got you.
This isn't quite as interesting, but we'll get through it.
Of course it is.
For the record, I'm Jessica Lee of Planner and Parks. And here to talk about our bridging facility work group results that we had from this last summer and proposed language changes for the next policy plan update. So first, I'm just going to start with some history. Bridging facilities were first brought up as a concept during the 2040 policy plan, and they're a subclassification of special recreation features, which now have been changed to special features. And in the 2020 update to the 2040 plan, there was a systems additions process that brought in the first bridging facilities search corridor or search area. So bridging facilities are still pretty new overall. In 2050, there was a slight update to the language, Emmett, that stated that bridging facilities would be included in the annual use estimate. And so that kind of sparked some interest from the agencies and some further conversation. So that's what brought us to today. So first, what is a bridging facility? The 2050 policy plan describes a bridging facility as a facility that is owned or operated by a regional park implementing agency that seeks to attract and introduce new outdoor recreation users to the system, prioritizes communities across our equity target areas of race, ethnicity, national origin, income, ability, and age, helps address inequities that contribute to lower participation rates among prioritized communities. And they may focus on young adults, teenagers, and children to encourage greater participation by the future stewards of our system. And so the agencies were interested in having more conversation around this. So we brought it to a partner meeting in the spring of 2025. And from there, it was decided that we needed a work group to kind of dive deeper into bridging facilities. And we had 7 of 10 agencies volunteer to serve on that work group. We met twice last summer. In our first meeting, agency staff kind of shared their concerns. Then in the second meeting, we went back with proposed solutions, and we were able to very quickly reach consensus. So now I'm just going to talk about those work group meetings and what was discussed. Initially, we started with the agencies sharing potential bridging facility sites that they were thinking about, and this included some city parks, nature preserves, county parks, and trails. And the concerns were that largely these sites were being encouraged or directed by their boards or communities in their jurisdiction, and it wasn't necessarily driven by the park agency's desires and needs, but more politically. And there was concerns, especially around local parks, and they felt that units not owned or operated by agencies shouldn't be eligible to become bridging facilities. There was concerns, of course, around adding new facilities when there's not enough funding as it is, and concerns that some facilities could balloon O&M costs. So continuing on with our work group discussion, there was a continual reminder of like what are we trying to do with bridging facilities? We're trying to reach underserved communities. If bridging facilities are doing that work, this should be represented in the agency's counts already, and that we shouldn't need to necessarily count at the bridging facility itself. The agencies strongly felt that taking out the counts would solve the majority of the issues they're facing. At one point, we took a vote to it to see like how people were feeling about bridging facilities, and they all felt that they should remain as a possibility, but there was consensus on removing counts. There was also a small discussion around mobile bridging facilities, where they decided that it makes sense to include as a component of a larger bridging facility site, but that they should not be designated as bridging facilities as a standalone mobile facility. And so we took the work group findings back to another monthly partner meeting with the park agency directors. And the agencies supported the work group's suggested direction that we were moving in. So then staff developed this new language that you'll see today. It's in the info item. There's the current 2050 language, and then next to it is the proposed language, so you can compare them side by side if you'd like. We shared this language at another partner meeting, and they supported it. And so the intent of this language is to serve as guidance for the agencies in the interim, particularly as they consider whether or not they want to pursue bridging facilities for the next system additions update process. So this language would not be adopted until the next policy plan update, when we would have it available for public comment and all that. But the intent right now is just to kind of serve as guideline. And I just want to note that there are currently no bridging facilities that would be affected by the language change. Like I mentioned, Three Rivers has an approved search area, but they're not pursuing it at this time. So now I'm going to talk about the language itself. A lot of the changes was just cleaning up the language and moving things around for readability. The bulk of the changes you'll see at the very end of the info item under the sections exclusions and funding and operations and maintenance. And I'll just briefly talk about that. So the first two are local city and county parks are not eligible to become bridging facilities unless they have been completely reimagined to focus on introducing new users to the system. And facilities that aren't owned or operated by an agency are not eligible to become bridging facilities. These were two concerns that were brought up time and again by the agencies. And then as far as the use counts, bridging facilities that are nested within existing units of the regional system will be included in the annual use estimate, but standalone bridging facilities will not be included. So this is really the big change, this fourth bullet point. This kind of addressed the agency's main concern. Once we reached consensus on this, everyone felt pretty happy about where we were at. And then the final two here are just kind of funding clarifications. The first is that bridging facilities that are owned or operated by an implementing agency sorry, a lot of words, may use regional parks funding for capital expenditures. So this would be our bonding program, modernization program, legacy, capital projects. And so that's like one of the big, what's the word I'm looking for, advantages of having a bridging facility classification is to use that capital funding that's available. And then just a reminder that legacy and equity program funds may already be used to support programming outside of regional units if it serves a regional purpose. So you wouldn't need a bridging facility designation to use to access those funds for outreach purposes, which we're already doing across many of the agencies. So that's what I have for you, and I know it's a little complicated, so I'm happy to dive into some questions.
On that fifth bullet about eligibility for capital expenditure if owned or operated, do we have any restrictions on what operated means in that context? I'm thinking, for instance, with our regional trails, we have some that are on regional rail corridors that are owned by something else. And when that happens, we require that there's a commitment that it'll be part of the regional park system for a certain number of years. Does this have anything similar like that where it's, they have a long-term lease agreement? Or is that something that's more flexible? They're doing it right now so they can get capital expenditures right now?
Yeah, go ahead. I think like the second bullet kind of alludes to like there would need to be a use agreement of some sort.
That's all I was gonna say.
And I don't know what the timeline on that would be, if we would say 10 years like with trails. I don't know that we would get that particular because each bridging facility is very unique and different needs.
Yeah, and just particularly because of the way capital stuff works and how it's frequently tied to bonding that also has terms and stuff to it, it might need to have some kind of number. I don't know if it needs to be 10 years or something else, but if a use agreement could have no term at all, just be, this can be severed by either party at any time, but this is what we're doing right now. And if that were the case, would it be appropriate for capital expenditures or just operational ones? We're not writing policy right now, but like you said, we'll get to that with the next policy plan update. But that's probably one of the things that we'll want some feedback back and forth in the meantime, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think you have a really good point, but if it is a designated bridging facility as part of the system, I don't think we would treat it that differently than any of our other projects that we have in that same situation.
Yeah.
And so I think our grants staff would help kind of guide us through that, as they already do with those use agreements.
I'm also trying to think. The language I'm thinking of that's relevant to like the trails on rail corridors might be specifically worded as only applying to trails, because I don't even know if we have a situation like this for a park kind of unit anywhere.
We've broadened out the joint powers agreement section of the plan so that it does clearly apply to both parks and trails.
Okay.
And your questions are great, Tony, around like use agreements, if there are capital investments. Let's just say if that happened, our expectation would be that the agency and the, underlying owner, whether it's a local park or whatever, that they would work that out. Minnesota Management and Budget, who we do, if we receive bonding, they have pretty clear protocol on useful life expectancy. So if there is a capital investment, we would need to abide by the expectations of Minnesota Management and Budget. And that actually came to bear with Rice Creek West when Anoka County went through the city of Fridley, and we worked it out.
That whole middle section is a Fridley City Park.
It's a largely a city park, and Fridley ended up giving an actual easement to that area to make it work. So, but there is an intention to have some flexibility in how those joint powers agreements, that's what I call generally, are negotiated. And
Basically, I'm not all that concerned at the moment about what the specifics are, just somebody in finance is gonna have to figure that out, basically.
Yeah.
Not even your problem necessarily. Okay.
So,
Anything else?
just curious, in one of the equity grants that we were evaluated, there was I think it was a park center bridging project from Three Rivers, that's the one that we're talking about here. I don't remember what I remember it was about Park Center, high school, and it was by Three Rivers, and there were a lot of questions because it wasn't a place, but it was a program.
Yeah,
That's the one you were talking about?
I do remember that project, and we were able to fund the programming parts of it, but not the capital parts of it,
Yeah.
because it wasn't in a regional unit.
And then, the mobile units that we're talking is kind of like the Brooklyn Park has like rec on the go, and there's like a little mobile, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I think those are great for bridging, because you can actually bridge something.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, we don't actually know what they are because an agency hasn't brought a proposal to us yet. So we'll find out.
My
We've
city
talked
has
conceptually,
two, they say they
but
love
yeah.
them.
Sorry, do you have something else?
Well, I was just gonna say, we actually used an equity grant to fund one of those mobile outreach.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I remember that one, because I think I put on the notes, oh, I know this one, that work.
But that's not really a permanent part
No.
feature.
Yeah. Like so many things, infrastructure and capital expenditure is way more complicated than operational stuff.
We need to create another budget, that will make something.
There are rules. Anyone else? I'm happy to see this because I know when we first put that language in, there was a lot of question about, is this a good idea, is this not? Some of the agencies like it, some of them don't. So the idea that now the agencies are coming to us and going, you know what, we all agree on this, that makes me happy, that's way simpler. So.
It's not often that everybody agrees, yeah.
Yeah.
It did sound like it took some time.
Yeah. Well, and it was gonna be complicated too, trying to figure out, like, even just the logistics of how do we count that was gonna be.
Well, even just with the name, like a bridging facilities, I have to think twice, I'm going, what are we talking about?
It is interesting having this split of, yes, you are eligible for capital expenditure, but then not eligible for the counts. Like, it makes sense, but I think that was probably some of the back and forth before of why we were sort of split, because there's some things that go each way, but having them agree on that split makes sense. All right, well, cool, thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess that brings us to the back of the page for reports. My main things would be, again, welcome Makisa, and also a thanks to Cecily Harris, who is going to be resigning from the commission to focus on the other many, many things that she volunteers for. She's been on the commission for 7 years representing District F, put in a lot of great time with us, and a lot of really good feedback from her other things that she does, being on tax and stuff for projects in Washington County to know what's going on out there. So we'll have a posting for District F at some point relatively soon. For anyone watching that's in the northeastern portion of the metro, I think it might be all of Washington County and then a little bit of suburban Ramsey. I don't know.
Just a tiny bit.
Yeah, it's like Columbus and they changed that line since I knew these, so yeah. Somewhere in the Lino Lakes, Columbus area, but I don't remember exactly which of those 4 are included. So we'll see that soon. I think that's it for me. Any other commissioners?
Yes, Three Rivers is launching her new enrollment program that is supposed to be way better. I'll let you know if it really is way better. Because it was not. sorry, but I'm excited about
Like
this
for all
one.
their permits and things?
I think it's for the programs and, permits,
Oh, yeah,
programs,
yeah.
everything, so
Yeah.
it's the same website, but how you log in and everything,
Like
it
register
changed.
for a class.
So
Right.
I'm
I've heard about
hoping
that.
it's like 10,000 times easier, but I haven't done it. I'm scared, Emmett.
Okay, are we good? Anything from you, Wendy? All right, staff?
Only to reiterate, we're really excited, Makiza, that you're here in District B. Bob had a great impact on this commission, and we're really glad that you can continue that work. I gave Makiza Bob's name and did a little introduction, so hoping that you can get together. Cecily was a commissioner that did her homework. We're sorry to see her go, and we're really excited to find someone new. So if you know someone in District F, please let us know. I did get the Secretary of State's office to post that vacancy today. And so, but now we have to do the promotion, and I'll reach out to the council members in that area, and agencies. So,
Do we have a rough targeting for closing date on that at all?
well, that's a great question. I'm gonna go with, it's February 5th today. It'll be open at least a month. I think it has to be open 21 days, but it'll be at least a month. And
It could be longer if we need to twist on.
yeah, we'll see if we can get some applicants. That's usually the challenge. So we're very grateful for all the commissioners who are serving currently. The final thing I'll say is that we are ramping up to the second year of the legislative session. It's a bonding year. The governor has us in his budget for $1 million, which we would match with $667,000, which is low. But we will keep working on that. The agencies are very focused on getting that number up. They're working on introducing a $20 million request that the council would hopefully match with a $13.3 million match. So,
The CFO might have a stroke trying to balance the tax levy, but
we'll get
it would be
there.
cool.
Yeah, it'll be good, and so stay tuned to that. We will be following that legislative session closely, but it's a tough session. There is that structural deficit that has been called out, which sort of dampens the appetite of the legislators to do a larger bill, and so we'll see what happens. Stay tuned. And if you have any friends in the legislature, tell them to get that number. I mean, I can't say anything.
Oh, you can, off hours.
Off hours, good point.
But I will also say it is really useful when we have the implementing agencies all working together to present a single number for that single program. I think that makes a better impression on people, like, oh, this is a regional thing for whatever, because otherwise if it's like, well, is this for the council? Like, no, it's for all this stuff. It's different.
Yep. So, we'll keep you posted, probably more than you wanna know throughout the session. Thank you. David Yakes has been texting me throughout this. He listened to our meeting online. And I did wanna say to the place names folks, he was like, he really thought it was impactful when Carrie Day said, we will be watching, because I think that's that accountability piece, but also the commitment piece. And I think that was a great demonstration today, so thank you.
Is that all? All right, and I think we're ready to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.